Hello and welcome to I Can't Believe It's Not the Mouse, the podcast all about animation not made by the mouse. I'm your host, Dr. Breno Macias, and today I'll be talking about animated adaptations of stuff. This is the thing that I don't think I've talked about it before, but we've seen animated stuff turn into live action. But what happens when it's the other way around? It doesn't happen as often, it feels like, but it does happen. I was just thinking about it because recently we've had a revival of the show Everyone Hates Chris, the show about Chris Rock's life, but this time animated so that you can cast new kids. And as a result, we've had people questioning, like, well, what's the deal with this kind of stuff? I don't know if it's popular or not. From what I saw, pretty good episode, pretty funny. Not a big fan of the animation style, but for what it is, it works. And it just got me thinking, there's a lot of times when people say, oh, if they're making live action remakes of animated stuff, they should do animated remakes of live action stuff. And how often do people actually want that? Before we get started, I just want to say, if you're listening to this on YouTube, go ahead and give it a like, subscribe to the channel, feel free to comment, and ring the bell for notifications. Also, if you're on Spotify or just any other podcast site, follow this show on those platforms. You see, the thing is that, well, I think that's great, make animated stuff out of live action stuff, Disney should remake, any of the Love Bug movies into animation. I mean, you already got a car that's alive, there's already fantastical elements to it. It'd be fun. But I feel like in practice, when that kind of stuff happens, people get more mad about it than they do rejoice about it, which is weird to me. Isn't that what you guys wanted? As of this recording, I don't know if there'll be any changes to it, but there was an announcement a while back that Universal will be doing Barbie movies with Illumination for Mattel, because they're going to be doing animated stuff because they want to, I guess no one wants to do a sequel to the live action Barbie movie, which perfectly understandable. Movie is best left alone, but it is a brand that makes money, so hey, we got to do more, and as a result, they want to do more, so the plan is to make it animated, and I think that's great. If you can't do more Barbie movies set with the Margot Robbie universe, then just do them animated. They already do animated Barbie movies anyways. And yet there was a vocal group online, at least on Twitter, who were very much against it. They were like, oh yeah, why are you going to make an animated Barbie movie and whatnot? And I'm like, wait a second, a lot of you guys are the same people who wanted animated remakes. Maybe not all of you, I'll give you that much, but I did notice some people who I've seen talk about that stuff, bring it up, and I'm just like, why are you suddenly mad about this? This sounds like the best case scenario. Like, yeah, I'm not too excited about watching a Barbie animated movie, especially from Illumination. No disrespect, just not a big fan. But I just kept on thinking, like, this is the best case scenario. You don't get a cheap sequel to the beloved live action classic. The franchise continues on as an animated feature, so, it's a win-win for everyone. And maybe it turns out good, maybe it turns out bad. I don't know. Don't need to be excited for it. I'm just glad that that's the way they're going with this. And again, people were mad about it. People are mad that they're doing a new Everybody Hates Chris, which, that might just be because it's a whole, like, oh, you don't need to continue it, whatever. Granted, this was horrible, but they did a Good Times remake that was animated. They're doing a Married with Children continuation, which, again, I'm not too excited, even though I love Married with Children. And it's just like all this stuff that's being done as an animated thing, and people seem just uninterested, not excited, even though this was the thing that they've been clamoring for. And I get it, just because something does a thing that you wanted doesn't make it good automatically. Obviously, it still has to do it well, but I don't know, I just feel like there should be a little more confidence given to these projects. Like, hey, look, they're doing an animated version of this. You know what? Let's see how it shakes out. I would, of course, prefer that it gets better animation, but, I mean, I can't complain if they're just at least trying. And, it's not like this is new anyways. Realistically, if we want to go even further, we've had animated versions of live-action stuff before. During the 80s and 90s, there was a lot, and I mean a lot of movies that would get animated shows, regardless of whether or not they were made for kids, to be honest. But they would still happen. We got Beetlejuice, the animated series, RoboCop, even the Toxic Avenger got something through the Toxic Crusaders. So, I don't know, it's kind of neat, and especially because since since these were live action movies that were not for kids, how they would do it for kids is pretty interesting. I mean, with RoboCop and Toxic Crusaders, it was pretty much like, okay, let's tone down the violence and whatnot. Toxic Avenger gets like a cool group of friends and whatnot. But then you have something like Beetlejuice, where it's like, oh yeah, Beetlejuice is essentially Genie to Winona Ryder's character, Lydia, and it's like, I mean, if you've seen the movie, that's a very weird way to go about it, but it's the way they went about it, and those are, well, in varying degrees, fondly remembered. Beetlejuice is definitely probably the one that's most fondly remembered of these shows. But yeah, it's like, okay, so they've done this kind of stuff before, and yet, again, people say, hey, we should do this, except when we get newer ones, it's like, okay, let's not do this, which, I don't know, I just don't know how to feel about that. Like, again, I get it, you still want it to be done well, but it's like, you're not even giving some of these a chance. I remember over a decade ago, they did an animated version of Napoleon Dynamite, like 5 or 6 years after that movie came out. And personally, I thought it was a pretty funny show. Unfortunately, it only lasted one season because, again, by the time it came out, a bunch of people just said, no, we don't want this, even though, I don't know, I feel like Napoleon Dynamite lent itself well to animation, especially because it was, I don't want to say it was like King of the Hill, but it kind of felt like that kind of style where it's like, okay, it's like mundane, but the characters are larger than life, and that's kind of where the animation really takes, advantage of the situation. Maybe if I rewatch it, I'll see that it's not as good as I remember it, but from what I remember watching and some of the jokes that I remember, it was fine. It was a well enough show, and hey, with one season, is it really fair to judge whether or not it could have been good or not? Because a lot of shows, maybe not anymore because Netflix cancels them right away. But there was a lot of shows that would, take a few years to find their stride. I feel like a lot of shows maybe hit their third or fourth season before they actually get really good. I don't know. It just feels like people should be more open-minded to these things if they truly do want it to happen. And I do think that they should want it to happen. I mean, we're getting all these live-action remakes, and you can go even further. There's been stuff that was animated, then turned live action, and then went back to animation and didn't get the fanfare it deserved. Transformers 1, it's, returning to the franchise's roots of being animated, and as a result, it's not making as much money as the live action iterations are. I wouldn't call it a complete failure, given everything, but that is the truth of what's going on. A similar thing happened to Spider-Man. They were doing a bunch of live action movies, and then out of nowhere, hey, let's do an animated Spider-Man movie. Did okay. Wasn't until the sequel where it became a mega hit, and it just tells you, like, yeah, sometimes animation is the way to go with these franchises. We had the live action Mario movie. I think it's an interesting movie, despite how messy it is, but it is a mess. And then you get the animated one, and it's like this very faithful, very loving creation. Some people don't like it as much just because it's not as interesting. I understand. But as an adaptation of the material, it's cute. It's well done. And it reminds you of why sometimes animation is the way to go with these franchises. They're coming out with a live-action Minecraft movie. I don't know if it'll be any good. It doesn't look any good. But throughout the entire trailer, I'm thinking, this would be so much better as an animated movie because the creatures do look, as a way of, how they updated them for the movie screens, fairly interesting. I think that they would make for a good animated movie, if at the very least for visuals. So then, what is the advantage of doing these things in animation? And realistically, it's that the possibilities are endless. Don't get me wrong, I love live action stuff, and I do want to see certain things go in the live action route because it is interesting. I'm hyped for that Zelda movie when it goes live action, and if they did another Mario movie that was live action, I'd be curious to see how they handle that. But for the most part, with animation, you don't have to worry about, do we have like an actor that looks this specific way? No, you just animate the character to look that way, and you find a voice for it, and it doesn't even have to come from someone who even looks like the character. Like, do we have the budget for that? It's like, again, maybe, there are some issues with the budgets, but your imagination could carry you much farther than it could with a live action feature. Like, as long as you're not doing any kind of crazy technique that it requires a lot of power, you should be fine. And that's the thing, is like animation offers a lot of more possibilities to what can be done. I mean, a movie like Beauty and the Beast, the way Disney did it, probably would not have been possible in 1991. A movie like Sleeping Beauty probably wouldn't have been possible in 1959. Yeah, they might have had something in that fantasy level, but to have this large, believable dragon, it probably would not have looked as good as the animated form did. So there is a lot of advantages to animation. Like, even to this day, when it comes to animation, like, when you look at any of the superhero stuff that gets made, animation versus live action, you find that the animation stuff, it's not even just about like, oh, they look more accurate to the cartoon characters. That I don't really care about. It's more so that they're able to cram in as many characters as possible without worrying about breaking the bank, and they do these larger than life situations that normally in live action would just either look a bit off, or even if they did perfectly well, would never look as great as that. Like, if we had Endgame, for example, as an animated feature, that whole scene where the heroes and villains are running to, fight each other would have been much more colorful, vibrant. It would have just been more of an interesting setup than what we ended up getting. And that's my main argument for animation, that we should consider doing it more on the live action front. I mean, we should consider doing more live action stuff in the animation style, especially if it's stuff from, years ago that maybe didn't do so well. Like, hey, why not take a crack at it on animation? Waterworld is a very popular attraction, but the movie not so much. But again, that attraction is so popular, why not try to bring it back, but as an animated film, where you don't have to worry about the money that would probably go into doing practical sets and everything. It's like, you can do this crazy visual masterpiece just using the animations. You got something like Moana that already shows you how good water can look in animation, and you could go more stylized. You could take more of an interesting approach to how the animation looks like. I don't know. There's a lot of things that animation offers that you just can't get out of live action. And again, it's not that I even hate live action. I love a lot of live action stuff, but I do want it to be more balanced and give more shots to animation, where it's like, okay, we can do some of these live action stuff in the cartoon form. Whether or not that's going to happen, who knows? But I would like to see it someday. Thank you for listening. This has been Octaviano Macias, host of I Can't Believe It's Not the Mouse, and I hope to see you again next time. Thanks for stopping by. Go ahead and follow this channel. Subscribe, like, and comment. Ring the bell for notifications. Go ahead and also follow my podcast, and give some love to my Patreon account while you're at it. It's www.patreon.com/psycams. Again, thanks for stopping by, and I hope you come back for more in the future.